All right, I think we're live. Are we live? We are live. Hey everybody, sorry I am approximately 18 minutes late. However, my MacBook decided to want to reboot. So that was an experience that I wasn't planning on having today. So anyway, get past that. Hope your Thursday is going really well. Today we are talking about planning your worship calendar a year in advance. That may seem like a big project by which you're kind of going, dude, that just sounds absolutely insane. Why would I want to do that? But I think after today, you may change your mind on that, or you may be looking to do this and you're like, how do I do this? So we're going to talk through that. We're going to talk through the pre-work we do, the work we do during the actual planning, and the post-work that's being done. So hope you'll enjoy it. Maybe you'll convince your pastor to do this. Who knows? So if you got questions for me, hit me up in the comment section. So I'll be monitoring the comment section as we go along for this Facebook Live session. Now, first and foremost, let me say before we even start on this whole thing that you're seeing today, this is not original by any stretch. In other words, I did not create this process. I do not in any way, shape, or form feel like this is my process for which I did. However, this is a culmination of processes that I've taken from here, and then other processes I've worked in other places and spaces that I've been in. So this is a culmination of stuff, and some of this stuff is slightly idealistic, and some of it is being a little more realistic. Majority of it's realistic, and there's slightly some idealistic parts in there as well. So that's kind of my preamble warning for this. So let me know if you can hear me audio-wise, if everything works video-wise. I'm going to double check here in the groups and make sure I'm up and running in the group. Are we up and running? Can you guys see me? I see we got 6 viewers. Let me see. I don't see comments appearing yet. Let me check one more thing here. Make sure I'm up and running in the group. I don't want to be talking and then you guys can't hear me. Oh, yeah, good. I'm live. Fantastic. All right, cool. All right, here we go. Let's start. Planning your worship calendar a year in advance. So let me get over here real quick. All right, so let's talk about this. We're going to talk about pre-meeting work, stuff you got to do before we even start this whole process. And in some ways, in my opinion, this is literally probably the most valuable part of the entire process, is the front-end work you do, because it makes the actual planning part so much easier. But if you can nail this front-end work, it's going to make things 1,000 times easier. So you want to do that. The pre-meeting work is extremely important. Then we're going to talk through arranging the calendar. How do we arrange it? How do you kind of pull all this together? And then we're going to talk through implementing the calendar. How do you actually implement it? How do you actually make it happen? And then last but not least, we're talking about some exceptions that we deal with. And we actually also will talk about some objections that people might have to this. So let's talk about the pre-meeting work, okay? So first off, let me back up. Let me say one of the reasons why you want to do this is if you are in any creative or communications world, if you plan your year in advance, you will be blown away how much easier the whole entire year flows in terms of actual work. In other words, if you kind of know a year in advance, every single sermon series, the worship calendar, what's being communicated from stage, it's mind-blowing how much calmer everything is and less chaotic. It just creates a whole better working environment, and you will find yourself so much more in sync with your senior pastor or teaching pastor, whoever it is that communicates regularly from stage. We have found it to be tremendous value for that. And so I've become a big believer in it since I came here, and since they do that process here. So let me just say, if you want to know the why, because it makes your life, it makes it a lot easier, it makes it work. It makes it work a lot better. So let's talk about the pre-meeting work. So this is the work that I want you to do before you sit down and you have this process. Now, by the say pre-meeting, I'm assuming there's going to be a meeting. So typically, by the way, at some point you will want to meet and you actually want to plan this out. But here's a lot of the work that you need to do on the front end, and that's probably where we're going to spend the majority of our time today, on the pre-meeting work, because I really believe if you nail this part of the equation, if you will, you'll make everything go so much smoother. All right, so pre-meeting work. One of the first things you want to do before you walk in the door, start planning your calendar, is you actually want to do some surveys. You actually want to survey your people to find out where they are. And I'm going to give you some sample questions of here what you want to do. So you want to find out some key things. So here's some surveys, here's some examples of what I'm referring to. This is something that we do. We actually push a survey through our pastor's social media channels and we ask some questions. And so here's some sample survey questions of what we're looking for. And by the way, the end goal for this is we're trying to find out where people are spiritually at and what they're hungry to know, what they don't know, all those type of things. So I want to know, what areas of the Bible are you uncomfortable with? So the goal of this question is I want to know where are the rough patches that people go, I don't understand this, I'm uncomfortable with this, I'm not quite sure about this, whatever that is. I want to know those things. So we want to start off with a question like, what areas are you uncomfortable with? And by the way, we keep the survey anonymous, so we don't tell people don't put their names. I think we can use like Survey Monkey, and we make it anonymous so people feel free to answer however they like. We also ask the question, what's your current burden for our community? So this is more of a missions-minded question. We want to kind of know like, hey, where do you see in our community that there's a burden for you? What do you see in our areas that kind of go, man, we need to be involved in X? That may not relate typically to a sermon or teaching series, but what it does, it kind of helps inform how we need to missionally push our people from stage to different areas of the community. Next question is, if you could ask God one question, what would it be? And the idea here is we want to have people to have some tough questions. What are some questions they kind of go, man, that's a big question, and I'd love to ask God X, whatever that is. And you're going to get some silly questions and some silly responses to that, but you'll be shocked at the number of questions you'll get that go, wow, people want to know X. And I believe the last one is, what is God revealing to you as you study His Word? So we want to kind of say, what is the conversations that are bubbling up between you and God? And do we see a stream amongst all of our people? And that's what we're actually doing with all these survey questions. We kind of lay them all out and we say, okay, what are some of the streams and thoughts and themes of things that we're seeing across the board from our people? What we have found when we've done these surveys is that before we begin planning our sermon series, is that when we ask these questions, we are shocked how much we thought our people knew about certain subject areas that we go, wow, we really need to go back and teach our people X. And we just assumed they knew that stuff. And so sometimes it feels like, man, we've really got to go back to the basics. And what we realize is we're just not repeating some of the basics enough. So it means, yeah, we got to go back and do a series on family. We thought we covered that, but you know what? We still got a lot of reach and growing to do in that area. So the goal of these questions is to find some common themes, and you'll be surprised. The last one we did, I think we had like 200 responses, and we had like 200 questions or responses, and we kind of mapped them all out. We were shocked with the number of things that we saw across the board going, wow, okay, these are some themes that we're seeing across the board. All right. Next thing you need to do is you need to, before your meeting, and that's something you want to do throughout the year, is you want to have what I call a spark file. A spark file is something that I keep, and actually I keep an Evernote. And what that does is this is a file by which I kind of keep ideas. And let me kind of break that down, what I mean by that is. A spark file is, one second, wrong screen. Spark file is something I use when I use an Evernote. It's where I start collecting stuff personally as the creative director, and I encourage other people to do that. And as the year goes along, collect things and articles that you think pertain to your community that you might see in the local newspaper, or streams of things you see. I mean, these are themes that we're seeing arise this year and we think carry on to next year. So example, I'll use like cultural articles, like the growth of something called Soul Cycle. If you haven't seen what Soul Cycle is, it's a spin cycle company. It may seem just like an average spin cycle company, but when you look and see what they do actually on site, it replicates a lot of what a small group or what church does. So I pulled that cultural article in to talk to when we talk about sermon planning, is like, hey, this is an example of somebody who's replicating what the church does. Is there anything from them that we can learn from, specifically in terms of how we communicate the gospel out? National surveys. So I'll pull stuff from, if I see a survey from like Pew Research, Lifeway Research, Barna Group, I will kind of collect that. I'll keep that with me as well. So when we start talking about what are people saying in terms of national research, what are people saying about Christianity, about the faith, how do we need better educate them from stage, we pull that as well. I will also sometimes say that I find a conversation for us that we're having on our Facebook page with a church member, or church members are having back and forth, that I think are really like going, okay, that's a really interesting conversation. I'll capture that and I'll take that and I'll keep that as well in terms of and keep that in well, because it's like, okay, wow, that's a pretty interesting conversation. Something that may spark an idea for a sermon series. And then we'll take notes from previous previous sermon series. So as I go along throughout the year, I will take notes. Our pastor takes notes. He takes notes of like, okay, this really worked well. This didn't work so well. So how can we kind of tweak that? So we kind of find out what are our hits and what are some of our misses. Feedback we got from people from previous sermon series, like, wow, our people really love this. And then we ask the question, what do they like about it? What can we replicate for next year? So that's what so I want to keep that in my Spark file as well. And the other thing we do is the pre-meeting work is I will start looking at the calendar. So for 2018, I'll pull together our calendar. Now this is not sermon related in the sense of like a sermon calendar. I'm just going to put together a calendar in general. And on this calendar, here's what I'm going to do is I'm going to start actually, before I even walk in the door, we're going to start thinking through our locked in calendar dates. And these are things that we just got to know are coming down the pipe. So holidays. Seems kind of dumb, but you kind of need to know when they're going to happen, okay? You kind of need to know Christmas, New Year's, all that kind of stuff. You kind of want to be aware of big major holiday weekends, because sometimes at some churches attendance dips. So I kind of want to know where to stay off of in terms of, I don't want to kick a sermon series off on a holiday weekend. So I want to kind of think those things. So I want to make sure all my holidays are mapped out. I want to make sure the school calendar is mapped out. Depending on where you live, school calendar can have a great effect when spring break, fall break, summer, you name it, when they get back to school. I want to have those dates mapped out on the calendar as well. I also want to have all of my church-wide marketing initiatives. And so what I want to do is, and that's stuff that I just know from my people are like, hey, this is coming down the pipe. We want to make sure we're aware of this. So I will pull major marketing messages that we know are coming down the pipe, and I need to make sure are there. So I'll make sure that I'll have the church-wide marketing initiatives kind of all mapped out as well. And then next, sorry, Chrome is being a little bit, there we go. Let me go back to this real quick. The other thing with church-wide marketing initiatives, so for 2018, for example, we're doing one fund. So that will be like probably a 5-week sermon series that we know we got to do as we merge all of our offering funds into one fund. So I want to put that down as well. So that also includes capital campaigns, all that kind of stuff. All right, the other thing you do is, I believe the last thing is here, is I want to review the last 3 years worth of sermon series, okay? And here's why, because I want to kind of see where we've been. So just to give us a roadmap of some places that we have been that we need to go, or some places maybe we need to revisit that we haven't been in the last 3 years. For example, I want to know what themes have we touched on the last 3 years? If I look at the last 3 years, are there some common areas where we tend to gravitate towards? That may be good, that may be bad, but I kind of want to know where we've been. I want to know what themes are missing. Like what across the board, if I looked across this, what's missing here? So I'll give you a quick example for us is, we may do stuff on marriage all the time, but I might say, what the theme is missing here? Singles. We don't talk about single adults. We don't talk about singleness and the blessing that it is for certain people to be in that in their life. That's what God's called them to do. That theme may be missing in our sermons. So we maybe think, hey, how do we incorporate that in our sermons in 2018? I want to ask the question, are we leaning too much into one area of the Bible? Okay, for some churches, I think we fall in this category. We have a tendency easily to go New Testament. We can go New Testament in a heartbeat. That's for some reason no problem for us. However, going Old Testament, we don't always go there probably nearly as much. So Paul's letters, we'll spend some time there. Judges, Kings, probably not so much. Maybe we need spend some time there. What areas of the Bible are we tough to teach? Are we afraid of? Are we afraid of, like, say, Romans chapter 7, 8, and 9? Some preachers call that the death valley of preaching, okay? Are we afraid of areas that we're afraid to go, that maybe our fear of not going to those areas, we need to go there, okay? I'm not sure what it looks like for your church, but I know for us, there's certain areas, do we want to go there? Yeah, we got to go there because we haven't been there in a while, and we know we're scared to teach that because it's just a tough area of the Bible. All right, give me a second. I want to make sure I'm pulling up comments on this because, bingo. All righty. Yes, Eric, this will be archived. All right. All right, and I believe the last one is, one second, folks. There we go. All right, so now I've done those things. I have looked at my calendar. I've got a Spark file. I have done survey prep work. And then I reviewed the last 3 years. So I'm walking in the door with all that information. So that gives me a really good lay of the land of where we haven't been, and some ideas and a lot of good ideas of where we should and could go. So now we're jumping into the actual planning meeting. So here we go. All right, planning meeting agenda. Here's what I want to do. First thing we do in our planning meeting is, and this maybe seem like really redundant and really like 101 basic, but we actually spend some time praying and we shut off all of our devices, or at least we attempt to. So that may be mobile devices, whatever, because I want to get the next 8 hours or however long we're going to be planning. I want us totally in on what we're doing. So my pastor will pray. He'll ask us, hey, what's on your heart and mind? And then he gives us like 10 minutes and go, hey, you guys got 10 minutes to get yourself squared away. And then once it's squared away, shut yourself off and get focused and get in the room and be here. So that's what we want to do. Okay, Eric asked it. Yes, we do it off-site, Eric, to answer your question. By the way, you guys can ask questions throughout. I'll just stop answering your questions. We do it off-site. We actually have a corporate office. I say we have a corporate office. We have a church member who has like a conference room at his office that we just borrow. And I find, by the way, that's a great question. I highly suggest you get off campus. Katie Allred has messaged me while I'm live. Come on, Katie. And then I want to begin mapping out the calendar. So we use like these giant, huge, massive Post-it notes. And what we do is we will post them all along the wall with each month. And if you'll go back, there's a photo that I posted earlier that photo with all of our notes. What we'll do is we'll put like October will be a note, November will be a note, and we put each month on a note, and then we kind of map out each Sunday. So I might put like, if it's November 5th, 12th, etc. So the whole wall basically is like 12 giant Post-it notes on it. And then on that Post-it note, I will map out and put like, hey, on the 5th, that is when this holiday is. So pull parentheses and say Labor Day if it was like September or whatever. December, when Christmas hits, when New Year's hits, and then basically all that pre-calendar stuff I told you to collect, I'll put it on the wall. So when we step back and we look at the wall, I can see basically all the major marketing initiatives, all the school calendar stuff, all major holidays. So we kind of have a giant window into the year. All right. So then I'm going to do is I'm going to take all that research, all that review stuff we did, and we're going to start looking through it, and we're going to start identifying themes and start seeing some gaps and start saying, okay, time out. Let's look through this stuff, and we start playing around. We start going, okay, what do we see? What's some gaps? We haven't done Exodus in a while, so what would it look like to do Exodus series? Then we start brainstorming. This is where we just start brainstorming, and we just start putting stuff on the board, and we just play around with some stuff. Now, let me say this, that our methodology by how we start that planning, that brainstorm, and this is what our pastor likes to do, is he prefers to plan around Easter. He wants everything to be central around Easter. Eric, yes, we do this over a 2-day period. We actually schedule 2.5 days, but typically it takes us about a day and a half to do this. We plan everything around Easter. So what that means is that we start with the idea of what are we leading people into Easter with and what are we coming out of Easter with. And that's just how our pastor prefers to do it, and that's fine by me. So we don't really start in January and think all the way to December. We start with Easter, so we may think of the sermon series that's going to go into Easter and coming out of Easter, and then kind of just plan in that direction. That may not work for you, but that's what we do. And so far, it works really well for us. So once we begin that process, then we start putting stuff in different segments. We start saying, okay, coming into Easter, we want to do this. Coming out of Easter, we want to preach on this. So actually, the first thing we do is actually decide what Easter is going to be about, what passage we're going to focus on. So you actually decide that first, and then decide what passage helps lead people into that. And then once people have learned that biblical truth of Easter, then we kind of say, then we want them to do what. So we kind of plan out from there. Now, keep in mind, this is where we're a little different in the sense of like our sermon series, the length. Your church may be one that is like 2 or 3 week sermon series. We probably on average do 4, maybe max 6 weeks. Everybody's different. Some people do 25-week-long sermon series. I don't know what works for you. I really like things to be 2 to 4 weeks, but around here we kind of go 4 to 6 weeks. And then it all just depends on what we feel like we need to kind of break down a topic or break down a subject matter, whatever that is. If we're James, maybe we'll just do each week we'll do a different chapter of the book of James. It just kind of really depends. But how you do your sermon length bumpers, your sermon series length, that's really up to you. But we tend to go around 4 to 6 weeks. So I'll begin with Easter. What's the biblical truth we're going to do to Easter? Then we're going to talk about what we plan, and this is what we plan going into Easter, and this is how biblical truth we want them coming out of Easter. Lisa, you ask, who is typically involved in this meeting? That's a good question. In this meeting, in the room, for us, now we're multi-campus, so it'll be our campus pastors, our senior pastor, myself, who's the creative director, and our small groups minister. And the reason why the small groups minister is in there, because he'll create small group curriculum based around the sermon series. So all of our small groups will be taking the sermon from each Sunday and kind of talking throughout the week about it. So he's in there to kind of say, okay, if this is where we're going, this is the curriculum we got to create. But we kind of keep that pretty narrow in that sense. Worship leader's not in there. Executive pastor's not in there. It's just the senior pastor, creative director, any of the campus pastors that need to be in there, and the small groups minister. So I find, by the way, a good rule of thumb is if you can feed everybody in the room with 2 extra large pizzas, you got enough people in there. All right. If you can't feed everybody with 2 extra large pizzas, then you know what? You probably got too many people in the room. But that's my personal opinion. Okay, so we plan around Easter. Plan in 4 to 6 week increments. That's what works for us. I find that 4 to 6 week increments in terms of sermon series works best to kind of unpack a truth. I find, by the way, for us, with our people, I have found when we get beyond 6 weeks, they kind of like go, by week 5, they're kind of like, I'm just done with this. So I found optimal is 4. We can maybe stretch it to 6. We've done 8 before, and just for our people, context of where we're at, doesn't seem to work really well. All right, so that's essentially the meeting itself. By the way, we plan out for, and we just go, we just pull all this stuff together. Now, we have a running Word document we're keeping this whole time while the meeting is going on. So as we're brainstorming and put stuff up, we have a running Word document that is distributed to everybody after the meeting. So we've got this Word document. This is our skeleton outline of where we think we need to be. And then my senior pastor at that point kind of makes some assignments on this work. And I'll talk about that here in a second in terms of the post meeting. But that's really the meeting. The meeting is kind of let's brainstorm. And this is June when we're doing this meeting, by the way, time length wise. So we're June. And what we'll do is we'll spend the time between June and October. And I think I'll talk about this in a second in terms of actually kind of firming this up so that in October we've kind of got this cemented. So post planning meetings. This is the stuff we want to do by October. I kind of want this whole thing cemented by October. Alrighty. I want to map out the scripture passages. So we might have said we want to do Exodus. I think we are doing Exodus. We're doing Exodus, I think, in February in 2018. And we know what stories we want to be around. If we're around Moses, whatever that is. So we kind of get really into like which of the passages we're going to be. So we actually map out all of our passages by October. So I kind of know passage-wise, this is where we're going to be. We're going to hit this, and this. So I kind of have a good idea of where we're at. So I want all those passages mapped out. So we have a good idea landscape-wise what we're actually covering from Sunday to Sunday from a scripture basis. I will then take this document and I'll begin mapping out all of our sermon artwork and all the sermon deliverables that I believe roughly we're going to need for each sermon in our project management software. So that's what I'm doing from the communication side. I'm going ahead and I'm mapping all this out so I kind of know how many pieces of sermon artwork I got to create in a typical year. Once I've got and in the document itself, I'm also mapping out sermon series titles. These are roughly what I think the sermon series should be called. Our pastor leans on us, my team, to figure out the sermon series titles. They work a little bit on the sermon actual individual titles themselves, but we'll map that out. We'll also map out descriptions as well. So when you see a title that says questions from God, there'll be a little paragraph, and my pastor or campus pastors will write that paragraph. And we need that for us to kind of give ourselves, that's really what I go off of when I'm creating artwork, is that little descriptive paragraph right there. So this is a Word document that's got all the passages lined out with the dates, sermon series titles, and then individual sermon titles along with the scripture as well kind of mapped out. I'm just using Microsoft Word, Sean. Nothing fancy. You probably could use like Google Docs and Google Calendar, probably get way more into that. But we keep this super low. We keep this analog as possible for everybody in the room, and then we just work on our end on digitizing all of it. But that's if somebody could come out with something like this, they're probably Planning Center probably has this somewhere in their system to be able to do this. So once I've got all this firmed up by like October 1-ish to the 30th-ish, between the month of October, pastoral staff, all of my comm staff, worship staff, everybody gets a copy of this document. So, and this is the point when we say, this is pretty much cemented across the board what we're going to do. Bingo, here you go. Everybody's going to get a copy of this document. Then my worship team, they start mapping stuff out in Planning Center. My team goes straight into project management, maps this out. My video team starts looking at it going, hey, here's some creative stuff we could do for certain sermon series. And we kind of really can kind of get a good idea of like, hey, this is what this year is going to look like for us. So this is the point when I want everybody to get their hands on this document, because the more people have their hands on it, the better off we're going to be in terms of communicating down the road, specifically on creative stuff. Jeremy asked questions. Do you have any suggestions a way to talk your pastor about the importance of this when he prefers to do it all by himself and often at the last minute? Great question, Jeremy. I will tell you this. Here's one of the drivers, not the only driver. One of the drivers for why my pastor does this is my pastor has says time and time again, he has no desire to be stressed out on Monday morning trying to figure out what he's going to talk about next Sunday. He doesn't believe that's the best thing for his family. Doesn't think it's the best thing as a leader. He doesn't believe that's being a good steward of his time. So he knows if he does this day and a half of hard front end work followed by a couple of sprints in between now and October, that he comes in Monday morning, it's already decided what we're going to be preaching on. The second reason he does that is, and he will say this, he said this numerous times, is he believes when it comes to our communications team that it's unfair for him to come in and throw something on us last minute in terms of prep, in terms of knowing and dreaming and creating. And part of it is I'm blessed with a pastor who has a creative background, who's a theater major, so he understands the creative process. So I understand I'm in a unique situation where I get a pastor who one, values his time that way, but also values our time. And so I would tell you one way to suggest this is try, I'd say, asking him, hey, is there a sermon series we can do like 6 weeks out? And you can plan ahead, and then we'll create some creative elements around that and see how that feels. Maybe just do a small test run of a short window. He may come back and go, wow, I really like that. I wasn't stressed out. You guys created some wonderful elements. What would that look like to do on a continual basis? So you may want to try a trial period. That may be one way to do that. All right, some exceptions to this whole process. There are exceptions to this process. And that is national community events. So if, say, heaven forbid, a 9/11 happens or something, a tragedy happens in our community, we will know that hey, this next Sunday, we've got to reroute a couple of things to make X, Y, and Z happen, whatever that is. So we've had a couple of events in our community where we thought, okay, time out, you know what, this Sunday, we said we were going to do X, but we're going to do this. And so we very rarely have that happen, but we reserve the right to say, you know what, we need to have a Sunday where we kind of just veer off the beaten path, if you will. Church-related emergency. That could be a whole lot of things. Changing leadership, whatever that is. Even if it's like a snow day, snow Sunday. Oh gosh, we got to reroute the calendar because guess what? We lost a Sunday. Whatever that is, we know we've got to change the calendar around for that. Objections. You're going to have objections. Jeremy, this is probably what you're referring to a certain degree. Your pastor probably has some objections because they want their freedom to do whatever they want, whenever they want. Here's some objections I commonly hear in regards to this process. One is that it's not Spirit-led. I get this a lot, especially from my friends who are Pentecostal, who I love deeply and dearly. This is not, how are you Spirit-led when you plan so far in advance? I hear that, but I will tell you, my pastors can recount to you, probably lost count in all truth, the number of times that a year in advance they planned something, and then when they opened up their Bibles on Monday morning to begin the process of fleshing out the sermon a little more in detail, and then preached it, we're like, wow, that's exactly what my congregation needed that day. And they will tell you that that the Holy Spirit surprise can work through that. And so we have found that that's not been an issue for us, that the Spirit has moved even when we planned a sermon a year in advance. That's never been a really issue for us. In fact, we've been shocked how many times that passage was the passage that we needed for our people right at that moment, right at that time. It's too much work. Some pastors claim that, you know what, this is a lot easier if I can just quickly, in my own time, on my own way of doing that. I will argue that if you calculate the number of man hours that people scramble to turn around and make something happen at the last minute versus the prep work on the front end, that you'll find you will spend less time in this process. If you would spend a hard day and a half doing this, followed by a couple more days in terms of actual hard planning, the amount of time you will save is tremendous. I mean, for example, for a sermon artwork for us, for our team, it goes super quick. I mean, we can do sermon artwork pretty fast because I know exactly the passages, I know exactly what we're talking about. I've got the summary document. We were there when we planned it. I kind of know exactly what my pastor's thinking, and boom, we just go. We get all that by doing a year in advance, and I actually honestly I just mapped out the next, from here to December, all of the sermon artwork. I went back and repositioned a few things, but I was able to do that because we all planned a year in advance, and my designers are never stressed out about sermon artwork. At least they don't tell me if they are. All right, so now I'm going to open this for a time of questions. I know I kind of blew through that pretty quickly. I have a tendency to talk a little fast. So if you got questions, I'm on Facebook right now. I'm looking at it. It looks like the last comment I got was Jeremy. If you got questions for me, I'm going to see if I can. I know I kind of blew through that pretty quickly. 1 second. There we go. So if you got questions, I'm on Facebook right now. I'm looking at. There we go. Bingo. All right. So if you got questions for me, I'm going to hang out here for a little bit, answer some questions about this. I don't think there's anything else I missed that I wanted to hit in regards to this. Again, I think this process is one that you can knock out. I really think if you do this, you're going to be surprised about how the stress is going to drop on your team. The number of people on the Facebook group who post all the time that their pastor sits there and goes, drops something on the last minute. This will reduce that. All right, Keaton, yes. How many designers do you have under you executing this vision? We have 3 designers. But I will tell you that I could do this process. If I was just creative director and I was the designer, I probably could do this. I could probably do this pretty easily by myself. I don't think this would be hard to do at all. So I don't. So we have 3 designers, but honestly, I just would need 1 to do this because we can actually move pretty quickly with 1. How do you start this process when you're planning? When you're only planning 2 weeks in advance? How much work is it in the front end? How many days, etc., months, etc. All right, Michaela. It takes roughly 2 days of hard, close the room, 16 hours, 8 hours a day of like planning in terms of the meeting. I would tell you the front end work I probably have to do along with everybody else is maybe 4 or 5 hours of just kind of pulling some stuff together. We do a couple surveys. Again, that's a couple hours here and there. So not too much work. I mean, I'm kind of keeping I keep running files in Evernote of stuff I just think throughout the year, and so I can just pull them back up. Post work after the meeting, between the meeting, which we have in June and October, those guys are probably pulling a good, I would say about 16 hours worth of post work of making sure all the passages are kind of laid out and having a good idea. So, so that kind of gives you an idea of how much work we're actually doing. Again, we're flushing stuff out. So, I mean, we still have wiggle room. We may get in there on Monday and we kind of go, that pass doesn't feel quite right. Let's tweak a couple things here and there. So we still tweak some stuff. We don't beat people over this, or hammer over the head with this document. Do you as a creative director give input typically to this calendar? Are you more there to take in what teachers discuss and communicate? Okay, I like to think I give a lot of input. I do. My role is a little unique in that sense, but yeah, I give a lot of input into what we talk about and what we preach on. Partly because part of my job is part cultural, in the sense of like I pull together the cultural stuff. Like here's what culture is saying, here's what we're seeing from culture, here are the books that are on like the New York Times bestsellers list, here's articles from these blogs, things, here's stuff I'm seeing from Facebook. I kind of, in my mind, I'm kind of the scrapbook person. I'm scrapbooking all this stuff together and say, here's the running themes we're seeing amongst our people that we may not see on a typical Sunday morning. They may not convey to us, but I'm seeing across the board in our community. So yeah, I have a lot of. I like to think I have a lot of input into that. Specifically, we've got a lot of input into how we name things and how we word things. My pastor will tell you, he's like, I'm not a wordsmith. If you think that title sounds dumb, change the title. He's great about that. We mapped all our. Oh, Melissa, congrats! She just mapped out all of our churchwide events until June 2019. Dang, I'm not even that far out. It took a lot of planning, but we think it helped. Congrats. Good for you, Melissa. Make sure I'm getting all the comments. Front end from Michaela. I will tell you, go back to at least about your question about the input is in terms of this, is that I will give input, but I will also try to listen to our pastors. And part of my job is interpreting, is going, okay, I'm listening to them. How do I interpret what they said and visually do that? Now, our model is slightly different. So like we have multiple campus pastors at different campuses, and every campus pastor's got different personality. So part of it is I have to kind of listen and kind of hear what they're saying, but also know the personality, know how to interpret what they're saying, the way they uniquely like to say it. So I got some that are really abstract and very concrete thinkers, so they're across the board. All right, let's see, make sure I'm kind of answering all your questions here. All right, so I'm trying to think of anything else. If there's something that we can provide, that Katie and I can provide for you as a resource for this, if you're like, hey, it'd be great if I could see an example of X, throw that in the comments section, and then Katie or I will get on that. I'll probably have to do it. Katie's on vacation this week. I'll put that together for you guys, and I'll drop a link in there for whatever you think you guys need. If you're like, hey, I'd love to see a sample of whatever document that is. In fact, you know what? Let's do this. I'm going to pull up something for you guys real quick, if you guys are okay with me doing that. I'm going to show you what the actual document looks like. You'll give me a second. I'm going to log into my account, and up here it is. And I'm going to pull up our 2018 sermon series document. Actually, this is 2017. So all right. Okay, let's see if you guys can see that. All right, so sorry, this is Word Online, so I'm not sure how exactly great that's going to be. All right, so this is the 2017 sermon plan that we've got. So this is what a typical sermon. So we start January with open Sunday basically means every campus preaches on what they want, and then we have 2 Vision Sundays. But this is what a sermon series looks like. So Transforming Truths, Theological Foundations is part of a curriculum sermon series we're doing. And this is how we lay it out. So you'll see the date on the left-hand side here, and then you'll see the actual sermon title, and then the scripture, and then this is a description of what that Sunday is going to be about. And then we just go on down the line. And you'll notice here on February 12th, I've got an all red right here. You'll see Lord's Supper. So that means, okay, I know for a fact what that means. By the way, one of the reasons for us why we note that is that means in the sermon, on that sermon for us, that worship day, I'm like going, okay, we've got to budget in extra time for the Lord's Supper, and it's just a note that we'd like to make. This is the Gospel according to Judges, so this is probably a little more standard. So this one, actually, you can tell at that time was not fleshed out, but this is the descriptive paragraph I was talking about. So we have our sermon title, Gospel according to Judges, the subtitle, and then the descriptive paragraph, and that's actually, again, what I'll use to create the artwork. Here we go. Here's Live Sent, which is our Missions and Evangelism series. Again, it's all mapped out right there. Yes, Brad, let me get a copy of this. Let me make sure it's okay. I think it'll be fine. And I'll just throw this on. I'll convert this over to a Google Doc. and let you guys see this, or a version of this, or one version of this, if you will. That's Living Sent. We do things your pastor wants you to know. That's where we let every campus kind of do their own thing. And then as you can tell, this point, we were still fleshing this document out. So this is version 2 of the document. So this was not our final October version of the document. Leading well. This is our leadership series coming up, and being present with God. Future church. So again, you can see some stuff's not fleshed out because we were in the middle of fleshing this out on this version of the document I just pulled up, and then all the way into Christmas. So this is not the final version. It's somewhere else on our hard drive, but this is the one I just had real quickly to pull up for you guys. But you can tell that's how but that's what the document looks like. And this document is the document we'll give everybody, and we'll flesh out, and we'll kind of send everybody. And there you go. So that's kind of what we're looking at in terms of what we send people. So there you go. So that's the document we live off of. Again, it's not super high tech. It's just a Word document. Yes, Lisa, what I'll do is this. Folks, I will link for you the Google Slides, and I will figure out a way to put this in Google Docs. And so you guys can have that. What steps do I go through to finalize? I believe every year they put one of the campus pastors, Sean, in charge of this. Like, I think they designate somebody whose job is to finalize this. My editor, I'm pointing back here because her office is right behind me. She'll probably go through and do a final walkthrough and edit it. And then once the senior pastor gives it the thumbs up, then we distribute it and send it out. And let me say this again. I can't emphasize this stuff. When we do this document, it's just like, it's wet concrete to a certain degree. Like, I still deal with every once in a while them going, you know what, we said we were going to go on this passage, but the more we dived into this passage, we were like, that's, Paul actually says it better here, so we're going to go over here. So we have some changes as we go along. But kind of once it's kind of final, once we feel like it's like 85% there, 90% there, they'll send it out. So one of the campus pastors will send me this document in October and say, hey, here's currently where we're at. We think we're pretty much close to landing it. So there you go. And then once I've got those dates, I'm telling you again, I can't emphasize enough how much of our creative team, like, they want that document as soon as they can get it so they can start thinking and dreaming and planning 2018. Yes, Scott, each campus, so our campus model, for those of you who don't know, is we have 7 campuses now. So we have 7 campus pastors. Each campus pastor preaches live on site, but they all preach the same sermon, same text, and we're all in the same sermon series. They each may use different illustrations. They kind of preach in their own style, but they contextualize it to their audience. What they do is their preaching team, what they do is, for us on a typical week, they meet Mondays like at 3 at the Brentwood campus, and they talk and dream and they plan. They talk about the upcoming week. What are they hearing? What are they reading? What's God revealing to them? And then I think on Thursday around 8 a.m. or 9 a.m., they do like a Skype call with each other to say, has anything changed? What are you guys thinking? And they button up a few things, and they're kind of out the door at that point. All right. Other questions you guys got? Just let me know. I'm trying to think of anything else you guys need to know. There's this document. I think that's it. All right, so again, what I'll do is I'll post the slides. I'll post a version of this document, slides, version of this document, and slides in this document for you. And again, also this video will be up for you guys. It's going to be archived here. We'll also post it on YouTube as well at some point later on today. If not tomorrow, we'll do that. Becky asked a question: are all of our campus similar in demographics and location? No, they're not. Vastly different. My South Campus and my northern campuses are completely different demographics. We have one campus in an area called Lockland, which is completely like young single adults, very almost like a mini Seattle, Portland kind of vibe to it. And then down south, it's like you're close to Alabama in terms of just like, so totally different segments. So again, we have to contextualize some stuff. And that always is a little bit, honestly though, artwork wise, it always puts a little bit of stress on us. But I always say, I always kind of shoot for the North Campus in terms of like design and style, and the South Campus is usually pretty cool with it. How how long we've been working the system. They've been working the system before I even got here. So I think Mike's been doing this by himself for a long time. I don't know what the system was like before that. I imagine they were probably like most churches where pastor maybe knew something 2 weeks out, maybe tops, and then the week of we kind of finalized it and just kind of turned it in. So that's a good question, Eric. I'm not quite sure. Yes, so Alicia's question, we have a small, she has a small staff of a senior pastor, worship arts, communications pastor, youth outreach pastor, and children's director. Since we don't have a large teaching staff, would you recommend to do this as a pastoral staff? Yes, I think it's actually a great exercise, because I bet whatever, that your children's director, your youth director probably have a lot of insight that your senior pastor may not know, and they'll be hearing stuff from your people that like, hey, our people will love to hear something about this, or they love it when we do X, so I bet you they give you a lot of insight. So yeah, it's a great staff bonding in just terms of actually just praying through scripture and praying through what your people need to hear about. Okay. All right. Well, I'm going to wrap this up. You guys have been wonderful. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you're having a great Thursday. Hope you had a good 4th of July. We're going to archive this. You guys will be able to watch this later on, watch it again. If you got questions for me, I'll be hanging out in the chat. I'll answer any questions you got, or you can just direct message me or message me on Facebook, and I'll answer any questions you have about this whole process, especially if you want me to, talk to your pastor about it. So love to do that. Anyway, hope you guys are doing well. Thanks so much for watching, and we will talk to you soon. All right.